What is up, Baton Rouge? Welcome back to the Tiger Pride podcast presented by 225 Magazine. I'm Mark Clements here as always with Jarrett Roser of TigerDetails.com. Recording this a day before Thanksgiving. What are you thankful for, Jarrett?
Man, I'm thankful that I have been able to stay healthy through this weird year. And just thankful for the people close.
Hell yeah.
And those relationships.
I'm thankful for all the same things. I'm also thankful that I had this gym sitting in my closet. Hey.
Oh my God. What do you mean just sitting in your closet? Give me the origin story of this. And also the mixing of holidays is hysterical.
So it came with a Santa hat for whatever reason. I bought this a couple years back for Friendsgiving. I just saw it on, I think, Amazon. Decided I wanted to bust it out for a Friendsgiving unannounced. So here we are. Sorry, it's got a little air vent. It's like right here blowing air. Yeah.
Yeah, for folks on Spotify or whatever, Mark's in a giant inflatable turkey costume with a Santa hat, which is very confusing to me. As much as people complain about Christmas sneaking into Thanksgiving time, that you can't even get a Thanksgiving costume without the Christmas attachment.
It came with it, who can't use a little Christmas in their lives right now after what 2020 has thrown at us? Let us have the joyous holiday spirit. So yeah, here we are. This thing hopefully will stay inflated the whole time. If not, I'll just be wearing a big brown bag. But also thankful that we get to talk about a win this week instead of an ugly loss after a few weeks of waiting for LSU to get a game in. They beat Arkansas 27-24. Not necessarily the prettiest game we've ever watched.
No.
But for LSU to get in and get out with a win after the season has gone through. Just let's start there. How big is that just for the team, the confidence? We talked about the schedule upcoming and how wins may be kind of tough to come by. So to grab one while they could was huge.
Sure. Both of those teams, as I mentioned last week, were going into that matchup game below 500 and really looking forward to getting back even on the season and setting themselves up to possibly accomplish some things against a remaining schedule that has few gimmies along the way. I guess the schedule as a whole has had few, if any, gimmies along the way. And so for LSU in particular, they needed as winnable of a game as remained before they get into now Texas A&M, an Ole Miss team that, while it would figure to be the lowest ranked and most winnable game the rest of the way, it's a team that can throw the ball all over the yard, and that does not necessarily bode well for LSU in the way that they've played this year. And then that Florida game and potentially rescheduling the Bama game at some point. And so for LSU to get this one, get back even on the season at 3-3, and just kind of have some sort of positive momentum now going into the rest of the way, I thought was really big at this point in the season.
And some of the, noteworthy results of that game. Andre Anthony, I thought it was awesome to see him win Defensive Lineman of the Week. He finished the day with 4 tackles, 2 sacks, which came in kind of some big moments for LSU. As a guy who's followed Dre kind of all through high school and seen him work his way into a more significant role this year in college, how cool is that to see? Just again, as somebody who's kind of knows Dre in his whole story.
Yeah, it was awesome for him. He was a fantastic high school football player, and I was very excited when he decided to sign with LSU and was looking forward to a really big college career from him. He's always been someone that has on the field been a tremendous playmaker and able to get after opposing passers, and outside the lines has always just been a really good dude to know and converse with and whatnot. And so to see him go through some of his early career struggles, getting himself eligible, getting himself healthy, overcoming some injuries and whatnot. And we talked at one point briefly, just kind of texted a little bit this off season about this was kind of the year for him. And he had some flashes, I guess, early in the year, but I think this was as big of a game for him as he's had thus far. And so to see it sort of come together at somewhat of a pivotal point in the season and have that type of where you're getting conference honors week, I thought was fantastic for a fantastic dude.
And the awards didn't stop there. Zach Von Rosenberg wins the Ray Guy Punter of the Week, averaging 48.9 yards per punt, 5 of 7 punts down inside the 10, not a single return on any of his punts. I tweeted something out during the game when there were some early game struggles for LSU that, I mean, rain or shine, you and I have joked, but also have not really joked that Zach's been one of the best players on this team and really kept LSU in a lot of games. But again, good performance for him and just crushing the ball for that boot.
It was really amusing to me after, beaming about Zach for a lot of this year and a lot of the last couple of years, but certainly in the past few days after he has that performance where, 5 of his 7 punts are down. Pinning Arkansas back deep, and he's averaging almost 50 yards a punt, as you mentioned. I apparently 8 years ago Tuesday, so November 24th of 2012, had posted on Facebook that if a coach says that the punter is among the brightest spots on the team, that's a pretty bad sign. And so it was a really amusing coincidence to see that on the tail end of 2 days of just glowing about Zach's performance on the week and on the season. But I'm in full Ray Guy Award campaign mode, the way that people usually are about Heisman's. I think that is something I'm very excited about, that I think he, to this point, has positioned himself well. And if he continues playing the way and kicking the way that he has, that he could be LSU's first, I believe, Ray Guy winner, which would be interesting because I've actually covered 2 Ray Guy Award seasons, but LSU has never won one. I'm enjoying your reaction. Ryan Allen at Louisiana Tech won back-to-back in 11 and 12. And so when I was up in North Louisiana, I had a chance to work with Ryan, who was also a fantastic dude to interview. But shoot, just keep kicking the ball the way you're kicking it. If you're Zach Von Rosenberg, and maybe get a little pass action in there and just add a little flair.
I asked him when I interviewed him preseason. I asked him if he's been trying to work Coach O to let him do a fake field goal or something, throw some kind of fake. It didn't sound like it was a promising, going to be promising in that category. But we'll hold out hope for now.
And honestly, if you're punting as well as he is and able to help that much in field position, whether it be pinning guys back or booming it and flipping the field, his leg's not doing his arm any favors because he's such a weapon kicking the ball away where he needs to, that it's such a benefit in special teams that they might be that much less inclined to let him sling it, even though, again, some of those practice passes look pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking more of like a fake field goal in some situation. I feel like he started taking over as a holder not long after Coach O was the head coach. And I don't know that LSU has done a fake since O has taken over. Maybe somebody can pull that stat somewhere, but I can't remember one.
So maybe he needs Cade York to start missing and shanking things. Just, I don't know, flip that ball around, give him the laces in, get in the young guy's head and say, come on, whippersnapper, shank this one. I need to throw it next time.
And then you can bring me out on the field and watch me drill a 50 whatever yarder like Cade did.
Okay.
Yeah, no. So back to the Arkansas game a little bit. I thought there's 2 kind of key stats that I've sort of circled, and I mean, I'm not alone here. These are things that I think everyone kind of identified, but there were 2 really key points to LSU getting the win in this one. And the first one was time of possession. I thought LSU handled that really well. Honestly, it probably shouldn't have been as close of a game as it was, with LSU having 41 minutes, 43 seconds versus Arkansas's 18 minutes, 17 seconds. That just seems that's silly. And then for LSU to be 12 of 23 on third downs versus Arkansas's 0 of 10, which we talked about, that's where LSU was offensively in the loss to Missouri. I thought those 2 were some key points. And before we get into some individuals, I guess what was your thoughts on just sort of the approach to the game plan of kind of trying to hold possession, especially when the defense is struggling overall? They played a little better on Saturday, but struggling overall, just to kind of keep the ball in the hands of your offense, shorten the game a little bit, take some time off the clock. I thought it was a good approach to when your team's struggling like that.
Yeah, I thought it was really smart for LSU against a team that we talked about was as shorthanded as Arkansas was because of the COVID dynamic to eat up as much clock as possible. And I thought the quickness with which Arkansas tried to run its offense was very confusing to me for the same reason. I literally, after that game happened, I had to drive out to Walk-Ons and Gonzalez to check on some internet situations for my high school playoff bracket release show on Sunday morning and make sure I was good to go there. Then drive back to that aforementioned bachelor afternoon grill situation for our friend Brent Broussard at Jay Ducote's house. Then go from Jay's to drop Brew back to his house, then come back home. And every one of those 4 drives took up more time than Arkansas had possessed the ball the entirety of that football game. And so when you are shorthanded and are putting yourself in that sort of a position as a defense where you keep giving the ball back to LSU, who is then able to milk the clock that way, it's not really going to bode that well for you if the game is close late. And we saw it play out that way. And as much as the speed of the game, the tempo that Arkansas played with did itself no favors, they couldn't stay on the field on third downs either and go that 0 for 10, which is something that obviously has hurt LSU badly at points earlier this season. But LSU was able to position itself well enough and make enough conversions on third down to go 12 for 23 on the game and 2 for 2 on fourth downs, and just came up with some of those timely plays there. And then a couple of less likely heroes late, including Jay Ward, who had been picked on throughout that game, suddenly comes up with a huge stop on third down and then gets a piece of that ball on fourth. And just critical moments LSU came through.
What was weird to watch in this game too is, and I don't know if this is still concerning in a lot of ways or if it's maybe signs of progress, but all of Arkansas's points came off of more busted big plays that the LSU defense gave up. LSU's defense gave up a 65-yard touchdown pass, a 50-yard pass, which led to a touchdown on that drive, a 50-yard pass, another 50-yard pass also led to a touchdown, and a 51-yard pass that led to a field goal. And all the drives that they didn't give up something that was 30-plus yards, they got off the field. And so, again, I don't know if I take that as signs of progress or still these big busted coverages are an issue, you know. But it seemed like there was at least some positives to pull from this game defensively for LSU, even if those busted coverages are still there. To me, those seem like things that can be fixed. And if you can get off the field on third down, a lot of 3 and outs, if you just look at the drive charts for LSU defensively, not staying on the field a long time, if they can keep that up and also cut out some of these big busted coverages, I mean, I don't think the defense is going to be setting records in a positive way this year, but it's at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I don't know, man. To hold Arkansas to 104 rushing yards, I thought was positive, and that 0 for 10 on third down was positive. But the explosive plays being the plays that have cost this team is really kind of the book all year long. I haven't updated the numbers, but I know that going into this matchup, it was something like 70 some odd % of opponents' yardage had come on like 18% of their plays through the season. And so they've managed to, I mean, as I said pretty early on the season, it's been very boom or busted coverage. They give up these huge chunk plays, and that almost always, if it doesn't convert straight into 6 plus an extra point attempt, then it sets up something quickly. It's been those huge plays that LSU allows that have cost it all year long. And I thought that they really needed to come out and have that number. My kind of magic number was I wanted to see LSU come out and only allow 7 quote unquote big plays. And per the stat keeping, they allowed 10 to Arkansas. And so didn't hit the mark that I was hoping for, which I didn't think was a great mark to begin with, but I thought would have shown some progress, and it doesn't bode well the rest of the way to me.
Let's stick with the defense because I think there were some bright spots. Also, we discussed this a little bit in the Mississippi State game, is how much the defense kind of falls off when Stingley's not in the game, and of course he left at some point in there, and Elias Ricks was also out after the targeting call, so they were down their top two corners, which doesn't help. But we talked about Dre Anthony, but I thought Jacoby Stevens was disruptive at times defensively, and I thought obviously Jabril Cox with the damn near pick six were some bright spots. But yeah, like you said, the defense is still not super promising moving forward. Were there any other things you thought were positive to pull from the defense, or is it still just kind of work in progress? Let's just sort of stop the bleeding and see what they can do. Just survive, tread water for now.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we saw was kind of more of the same. With all the success that they had getting after opposing passers, you saw Dre end up with the team's only 2 sacks. They had another hurry where Ali got into the backfield, but it wasn't one of their more prolific games in that regard. You see an Arkansas team that is not a world beater by any means. We talked about how much they'd kind of lived and died by the turnover margin, and most of their other statistics hadn't been great through a lot of the season. They put up 339 yards passing and 443 total. So I think there's some positives to try and take from, again, making some of those timely plays and getting off the field in a couple key spots. But overall, I'm still worried about where this team is, particularly knowing that the storyline awaiting on this next trip now to College Station is much different, where A&M has been fantastic. I mean, they've been one of the best teams that program has had in quite a while, up there rivaling that 2012 team, just without a Johnny Manziel at quarterback.
Before we switch over to A&M, let's talk a little bit about the offensive performance from LSU against Arkansas. You mentioned the turnovers. Ironically, LSU only had one, put the ball on the ground 5 times in total, but only lost one of those. But I thought TJ Finley played pretty well, taking care of the ball. And I just thought it was interesting to watch him because we saw him in his first start, and it was kind of a blowout, and everyone's maybe overhyping him. And then you see him in Auburn, and it's a poor performance, and everyone's kind of back down. This was the first game he's had to go in where it's been pretty neck and neck. And then, I thought he showed a lot of poise on that game-winning drive to go down and get the touchdown, kind of buying some time before he hits Dre on the touchdown. But I thought it was a good kind of middle ground game for him to be in, where it's competitive the whole way. He's not too comfortable with the big cushion. He's not having to play from behind and a field and rush. It was a good middle ground with him. Finishes the day 27 of 42 for 271, 2 touchdowns and no INTs, which again, going back to the turnover margin that Arkansas kind of made his living on. I thought he had a pretty good game, and especially bouncing back from that Auburn performance.
Yeah, I took more positives from the offensive side overall, and TJ being one of them, than I clearly appear to have on defense. And so TJ going 27 for 42 without any turnovers, the 271 yards, I thought was a nice showing for him after, as you mentioned, having had a really difficult day at Auburn. Just seeing him shake back and have a nice overall day. And some of that was helped by the fact that Ty Davis Price was able to rush for 140 yards on the ground on those 24 attempts. And so I think the offensive line kind of did its thing, enabled the offense, both passing and rushing, to do enough to feel good enough about coming out of that game. And yeah, that was kind of where more of my positive feelings lied, I guess, coming out of this one, in what was kind of a weird one.
No, Ty also had that touchdown catch, huh?
Yeah, you're still fixated on that. I mean, thank goodness for for TJ and Gilbert and then Jure to complete that drive after that one was kind of tough and left a lot of LSU fans talking when that catch was called incomplete.
Yeah, I thought the refs had not their best day either. It was kind of just overall on the field for both teams. Referees, announcers kind of got on a lot of people's nerves. I think it was just an overall not a super fun watch.
It was just, I mean, it's 2020. It's LSU, Arkansas. LSU hadn't played in a few weeks. Arkansas for a while looked like they might not be able to play. It starts raining. Yeah, 11 a.m. kickoff. It starts raining at one point. You don't have Stingley and Ricks out there. There was a lot going against this one being pretty, and it did not go pretty for much of anyone involved. So you kind of walk away from that one and feel good that you were on the right side of it and realize that there's still a lot to clean up before you now head to College Station.
And one last positive I want to touch on, which also kind of leads into a little bit of newsy items, but where do I have it written down? 5 different guys with 3 or more catches in this game, which I thought we've talked about the offense spreading the field and how good that's kind of been. But Racy had a really big game, and obviously it looks like he'll be out this week, if not further down the line. How big of an impact is that, losing him? Because he seemed like a guy that was starting to build a little bit of a rapport with Finley. So how big is his loss? And then who do you think out of the next group up, whether it's Butte, Kirkland, or maybe somebody else, I don't know, Coy Moore, somebody, who do you think kind of takes some of those snaps and fills in those shoes?
Yeah, I think you're going to see some of each of those guys, and that they're all going to have their opportunities, and we'll see kind of how Texas A&M plays some of it. But I certainly think that Jure has continued to come along and establish himself as much of a next wide receiver threat behind Terrace Marshall Jr. as anyone. And so I watch him pretty closely heading into this week. John Trey, who we've obviously seen step up big in some moments, particularly earlier in the season. I think he's going to have an opportunity to come in as the most veteran of that entire bunch and make some plays in a hostile environment against a ranked team. But Kayshawn, you hear them talk more and more about his continued progress. Coy, after missing a little bit of time right before or early in the season, I think I continue to wait for him to emerge that much more and think this could be one where it would make some sense to me if he got involved. And then Trey Palmer is a guy that we've seen make more of his plays in the return game, but they keep talking about his threat as a wide receiver. And I mean, he can go as much as any of these guys. And so he gives them a little bit more of a deep threat if they end up feeling like he's ready to roll in these circumstances than any of the others. And so I think they've got some options, certainly, and I wouldn't be surprised to see all of them involved at different points in this game.
Yeah, I think they've been pretty creative at finding ways to get these guys some touches. So I'll be excited to see that more in the future, whether it's some screens, little short ends, kind of giving the ball in space and that kind of thing. Let's go to players of the week. Let's start defensively, and I'll let you get the first shout.
Thank God. I'll go Trey Anthony.
Yeah. I want to let you give your guys some love.
Yeah, that's exactly if I had the opportunity to choose which side I was going to first and which side I was picking first, I wanted to go to Trey Anthony. He had those 4 tackles, the 2 sacks that were big, and we mentioned the conference honors and everything, and just a nice week for him to have that type of an impact at a time when this team needed it to escape a close game on the road and needed to escape with that close victory on the road and get back even on the season. They have obviously some newer faces that have had their share of headlines, and Ali Gay and BJ Ojolari and Jabril Cox and company. But I think to have a leader on this team that's been here for years now, like Andre Anthony, step up at this point was potentially big for that unit as a whole.
Yeah, that was awesome to see. I'll go with Jabril just because of his interception, almost pick 6. It was a nice snag in the air. Good change of momentum for LSU, and he helped, obviously, the linebacker position helped limit Arkansas to 104 yards rushing, which was a pretty good day for them overall. Going to the offense, I'll take TDP. 24 carries, 104 yards, 1 touchdown rushing. Should have been 2, but he had a nice big day. And I think the kind of the flow of the game just dictated for him, with the wet field and just kind of, I don't know, his downhill running style just seemed to fit this game a lot more. And I thought he ran hard, made some nice cuts. And it's good. I think it's nice that we've seen both Emory and TDP at points this season kind of take over games and be able, you can rely on both of those guys in different moments, depending on kind of what the defense is throwing at you, what the game calls for, what's being dictated. So it's good to have both of them with some big games to their name.
Yeah. And obviously, we're not mentioning him as much during Players of the Week because we usually just have the offense and defense, but shout out again to Zach Von Rosenberg, who we talked about some earlier. But as far as my offensive player, with you taking TDP, I'll take TJF
Fridays.
TJ Finley with his aforementioned 27 for 42 for 271, 2 touchdowns and no INTs. They needed plays late, and he came up with some on the road. Even after his last time out had been kind of a struggle, he went out there and made the plays necessary to keep himself on the field, keep his team in the game, and then find Jeray Jenkins late to lift them to the victory.
And now LSU takes on Texas A&M this weekend. Their first ranked opponent of the season, which feels weird to say, but it's the way the season's fallen. A&M 5-1. They've got wins over Vandy, Florida, Mississippi State, Arkansas, South Carolina. The only loss so far has been to Bama. They've had 2 weeks off with COVID issues with Tennessee and Ole Miss, so now they've had extra time to prepare. Do you think? Are you viewing that? Is that an advantage for A&M having 2 weeks off to kind of get rested and get healthy? Is it more of an advantage for LSU because they've played recently and they're kind of in the groove of things, coming off a win? Any sort of approach to that situation?
No, I mean, you could see it going either way. It's just it's tough to say until you actually get closer to kickoff and see how things start. Really, from our perspective, to this clown here, Marcus sipping out of a looks like a blue Solo cup that has 50-7 LSU sharpied onto it.
Is it the commemorative cup from last year? Yeah,
souvenir cup. Yeah,
I don't know if you got one, but it was a big deal.
But I'm sure A&M is going to be well prepared for this game that they've been waiting on. I'm sure they're going to be hungry to get back out there. They've been kind of agitated by the fact that they've been sidelined with very few positive COVID tests on their ends, but a lot of guys quarantined the past few weeks. They feel like they'd, again, been playing some of their best ball in quite a while and just came to a screeching halt. And so they've been waiting on this game. In that regard, they've been waiting on this game because of that 50-7 that's on that cup. I know folks out there were really excited to finally get on the right side of things in that 7 overtime game and end up with commemorative cups as a result of it. And they've been really salty about the way it went in Baton Rouge last year and eager to get back on the right side of things and prove that 2 years ago was no fluke. But at the same time, you are sidelined for 2 weeks. You do get you put yourself in a position to where there's a chance that you're a little bit out of rhythm and lost some of the momentum that you had built during those weeks where you were playing so well. And so we'll see how it all plays out. I could see that going either way. And for LSU's sake, they really needed to be the rusty, out of rhythm side for A&M because this A&M team is really strong this year. It was just, I mean, again, as I mentioned, Arkansas wasn't doing a lot well statistically in a lot of ways heading into this past week's game, other than the turnover margin. A&M's pretty good across the board. They actually don't rely very heavily on turnovers, but also take care of the ball. Don't turn the ball over, and they're able to be a problem for opponents, despite having played Alabama and Florida on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. So offensively, they've put up 40+ points in 3 of their last 4 games, including that game against number 4 Florida, who was playing really well. They're led by Kellen Mond, a name that everyone should know. At this point, the most tenured SEC quarterback. He's thrown for 1,468 yards this year, completing 64% of his passes, 16 tutties, 2 INTs. But they really kind of a run-heavy team as well. Isaiah Spiller, number 4 in the SEC, with 643 rushing yards. And as a team, they lead the conference in both yards per game on the ground and yards per carry on the ground, which LSU's defense played well against the run this past week. And at times, their rushing numbers probably look a little better because teams are probably throwing more because their pass defense has been that poor. But the way this offense can flow, and on the other side of the ball, A&M's defense is number 1 in the conference, giving up just 338 per game total yards. On paper, this looks like it could be a rough one, especially when you give A&M 2 weeks to rest, 2 weeks to prepare. Is there any one position group, or you mentioned turnover margin, not really as big of a deal for A&M? Is there anything that you're kind of keep your eye on as going to be key for LSU, whether it's just, trying to do the same sort of game plan they did against Arkansas, time and possession game, and just keep the ball out of A&M's hands? If you're LSU, how do you sort of approach this game to get out of there with a win?
Yeah, I think some of those things you mentioned certainly factor in. As much as A&M has taken care of the ball, they have not forced a lot of turnovers. And so for LSU, the Tigers would hopefully not be giving the ball away and be able to hang on to the ball. And if that lends itself to keeping possession, converting some third downs, keeping the clock moving, keeping the ball away from Kellen Mond, Isaiah Spiller and company, then that's certainly a positive. A&M, for all their success across the board, they've been incredibly stout against opponents' rushing attacks, but they have given up a little bit more through the air, and again without many takeaways. And so maybe you take some positives from TJ Finley having a positive performance on the road against Arkansas, and hope that he can go out there and have some success, protect the ball, and make enough plays to move some drives down the field and put some points on the board here and there. But a lot is really going to ride up front, because they're going to have to find a way to have some success, at least in spots, running the football. And A&M is 12th nationally in run defense. And so as much as you say maybe there are some opportunities here and there for even a freshman quarterback who is coming off of a good performance to have a good game, he's going to have some help. And on the flip side, A&M has a lot of weapons that Kellen Mond distributes the ball to pretty evenly. They've got some versatile guys in a Spiller, who was the leading rusher and receiver last year in Baton Rouge. Have Anais Smith now, who is the leading receiver, but also one of their top rushers. Devon Achane, the freshman, is a threat in both categories. You haven't seen him catch the ball as much in his limited opportunities earlier this season, but if you can get the ball to him in any capacity, he's a threat. And so there's certainly a lot of concern there from the LSU defensive standpoint, and the trouble to cover that many guys. And there will be a lot of those rub routes and all of that. But A&M's offensive line has been maybe the best offensive line that they've ever had. And so if you can't find some way up front to impact Kellen Mond there and to limit Isaiah Spiller on the ground there, then it's going to be an incredibly long day with all of those other weapons at play. So a lot starts up front for me on both sides.
And that's also concerning when you just going back to the run game and the O-line, is if A&M is one of the best in the conference / country in rush defense, and vice versa in rush offense, this game could, the same way LSU kind of held the ball against Arkansas and I guess shorten the game a little bit, that could happen against LSU. And if your offense can't get anything going and A&M can eat some clock and move the ball down the field, could be concerning. If we're going to try to find some positivity to enter the game with, I think LSU does have obviously, like we talked about it a bunch, a lot of weapons offensively, a lot of guys that TJ can go to, hopefully get some things moving. But again, what are you laughing at?
It's so funny. You can't see most of your turkey costume, so you really just kind of look like Sumo Santa right now.
Sumo Santa, I'd watch that. Tomorrow, what is your? I feel like we've had this discussion before. Are you not like a big Thanksgiving meal guy? Isn't that right? Yeah, I was gonna ask your favorite side dish or something, but I feel like you don't.
It's interesting because I thought about it earlier. That is such a common football conversation podcast question that I get asked that question on radio and podcast, etc., probably half a dozen times every Thanksgiving week, every season, always just around football conversation. And then every year you hear every SEC coach, and I'm sure elsewhere the same, you hear that question of, Coach, what's your favorite Thanksgiving side? And it's funny how constant of a question that is this time of year, that I feel like I had never been asked nearly that much in normal conversation. But if it's Thanksgiving time during football season, you're gonna have some turkey talk in there with your schematics.
What about like drink of choice when you're watching some NFL action, just big chilling? Anything special?
Not really, man. I mean, whatever's there. As picky of a kid as I was, and as picky of a person as I still can be in terms of food, I'll drink just about anything. I've had some Thanksgivings when I was younger where I got into a little bit of trouble with that because I was trying to keep up drinking with everyone. And so I'm trying to drink whatever my dad's drinking with him, whatever my aunt's drinking with her, and whatever my uncle's drinking with him. And so I had a year or two at different points where suddenly I'm like, man, not to speak too soon, but all that beer, daiquiri, margarita, vodka is really kind of getting to me now.
I'm the same way. But then that's how it's a good Thanksgiving. Then you fill up on food and just get your big old belly, loosen your pants up a little bit, fall asleep on the couch. It's the way to go. Bring home a to-go plate to eat the next day. That's the dream.
I really am mostly over these next few days looking forward to a lot of football and football work as much as anything, just trying to catch up on some things, catch up on some film, get some new 2022 prospect rankings out, get ready for the high school playoffs, get ready for this A&M game that I think, as you mentioned, on paper, it looks like it could be problematic for LSU, but LSU has just kind of had A&M's number more often than not through recent years. And so I'm interested to see if the Tigers go out there and have some issues against a really good A&M team, or if they come out there and suddenly put a little bit of scare into the Aggies and their fan base. I think it's just going to be a lot of fun the next couple of days to watch some of this football and get some football related work done too.
It'll be exciting to see. If there is one game that LSU maybe could pull the upset, I would probably mark this one over a Florida or a Bama just because of the heated history and past these two have. Looking at the spread, if this is accurate, it's currently A&M by 14.5, just over two touchdowns. Will LSU keep it closer than that, or will it get out of hand and be more at the Auburn game?
I would not be surprised either way. I really could see this game being a problem for LSU, and I don't know that I'm going to say it gets to the point that we saw occur in Baton Rouge last year, but roles reversed. But I could see it being one where the A&M fans are feeling pretty good about themselves in a similar sort of way and whatnot. If LSU does not have some answers to some of those statistical on paper matchup deficiencies in this one. But historically, LSU has, even in situations where A&M has some of its better teams, or LSU seems like it doesn't have one of its best teams, LSU has still managed to get the best of this series, other than that very controversial 7 overtime game 2 years ago.
You want to give a score on it?
I am going to predict A&M wins this game, which, dude, I'm thinking back, and with that Florida game postponed, this might be the first time this season that I've picked the other team to win.
Yeah.
But I think A&M is so strong up front that it's going to create problems for an LSU team that has had some issues in that regard. And so I'll take A&M to come back, maybe have a little bit of early rust that it has to knock off, but still end up scoring 38 points, and LSU not being able to keep up because they have some trouble establishing the ground game. And so finishing them in the mid-20s, say 24.
Like you're in my head. I just thought 38-24, and you bust out with it. My biggest, I'm going to pick A&M also. The one thing I can't tell is, you mentioned the 50-7 last year and just how heated these two teams have gotten. I don't know if Jimbo, if they have the opportunity, is going to want to just, like you said, reverse that number right back on LSU when in their down year.
Yeah. That's definitely something I've thought about with if this game gets a little lopsided, I do not see A&M letting up until very late.
Yeah. So, if they're up 20 in the early third quarter or something, it's going to get worse than that. But, I'll go with you in the sense that I think LSU, you mentioned they've gotten the best out of this series a lot of times. I think not going to get the win, but we'll keep it closer than I think maybe some of the quote unquote experts say.
For me, so much comes down to the trenches. As improved as Kellen Mond is, and as great of weapons as there are around him, A&M's offensive line has been fantastic. And on the defensive side, the fact that they are, again, 12th nationally in run defense is really concerning on the flip side, when I think TJ really needs Ty and John to have some sort of success and open some things up for him.
What I'm trying to figure out or think about in my head is how many big plays LSU's going to give up, because I think the defense has played better as a stretch because the bar was pretty low. But anyway, when you don't give up 50+ yard bombs left and right, you're giving yourself a much better of a chance. If they can limit those,
haven't seen it yet.
I know. I don't know why I keep trying to give myself this false confidence. I'll say, you said 38. I'll put them in the 41, but I'll let LSU get some things going offensively. 41-31 A&M. That's what we're calling. So big plans over at Tiger Details. Big plans. Make sure you follow Jarrett on Twitter at Jarrett Roser at Tiger Details. I'm on Twitter at Mark Clements225. And of course, all the 225 magazine brands, Facebook.com/225 magazine, Instagram and Twitter at 225 Baton Rouge. And be sure to follow the podcast, subscribe, leave a review, and tweet Jarrett all the good food that you're eating so he can not enjoy it, and then tell him what you're drinking, so maybe he'll keep up with all y'all too. Just put as many liquids in Jarrett as he can. Thank y'all for listening, and we'll see you next week.